Hello my hero, have a nice viewing dear. If you like the story, please like it and write your opinion in the comments, please please please.
My wife said I was too jealous and sent me to her therapist. 3 years later, I found out I wasn't sick, I was right. I used to believe that therapy was sacred. A place where truth lived. Where healing happened. Where masks came off. Now I know better. My name is Nathan. I'm 38. I run a digital design studio. Married to Claire, or at least I was. We met in college. She was ambitious, brilliant, and fiercely independent. The kind of woman who made you feel like you had to level up just to stand beside her. For a long time, I thought I had. But when someone's betraying you, they don't stab you in the chest. They twist the knife into your mind. It started like this. One night, Claire sat me down in our kitchen with that voice, soft, calm, almost maternal. Like she was trying to soothe a child, not talk to her husband. "I think you're struggling," she said. "You've been tense, controlling, suspicious." I blinked. "Suspicious?" She sighed. "You've accused me of things. Checked my phone. Questioned where I've been. You weren't always like this." I felt heat rise in my chest. I wanted to say, "I never accused," I asked. "Because something feels wrong." But I didn't. Instead, she leaned forward and said something that chilled me. "I think it's time you talked to someone." She meant her therapist. A man named Dr. Lorne. She'd been seeing him for years, always said he helped her untangle her past. She trusted him more than she trusted anyone. "Just one session," she said. "See if it helps." At first I refused. But she kept planting the seed. Slowly. Gently. Until the idea felt like my own. So I went. Dr. Lorne's office was exactly what you'd expect. Minimalist furniture, warm lighting, shelves lined with books like emotional anchoring and the power of stillness. He greeted me with a handshake that lasted a second too long. The first session felt fine. Strange, but fine. He asked questions about my childhood. My parents. My habits. Then, casually, he asked about Claire. "How would you describe your relationship?" "Solid," I said. "But you mentioned jealousy." I shifted. "I guess sometimes. But I don't know if it's jealousy or just instinct." He nodded. "Have you ever struggled with anxiety? Control issues? Feelings of inadequacy?" That one hit harder. I said no. But part of me wondered, should I have? That's how it began. One session turned into 3. 3 turned into 6. By month 4, I had a diagnosis: obsessive jealousy with anxiety-linked paranoia. I started to believe it. When Claire came home late, I told myself to relax. When she got secretive with her phone, I said it was me projecting. When I found an unfamiliar shirt in the laundry, "You're just overthinking again, Nathan." Dr. Lorne taught me to doubt my gut, to distrust my instincts, to filter every concern through the lens of mental illness. And Claire? She praised me for doing the work, for being brave, for finally trusting her. I didn't realize what was happening, not yet. But the truth was waiting. And it was darker than anything I imagined. They called it therapy. But it felt more like training me to ignore the truth. The first sign was so small, I almost missed it. Claire was out late again. "Client dinner," she said, tossing on a blazer I hadn't seen before. I kissed her on the cheek, smiled, and told her to have fun, like a good, emotionally aware husband. Like the version of me they had groomed me to be. I stayed home that night, trying to distract myself. Read a few chapters of a book Dr. Lorne had recommended. Letting Go of Control. It felt like it was written for someone else. Someone unstable. Unreasonable. But I swallowed it. Claire got home around midnight. Lipstick faded. Hair slightly tousled. Smelling like cologne I didn't recognize. Not hers. Not mine. "You're late," I said quietly. "Traffic," she replied. And Sarah ordered dessert. You know how she is. Sarah. Her colleague. The default alibi. Something twisted in my gut, but I smiled and nodded. Just like I was supposed to. I didn't sleep that night. The next day, I mentioned the cologne during my session. Dr. Lorne folded his hands, leaned forward, and said, Nathan, this is your pattern. Suspicion. Projection. Fear. You're doing it again. I nodded, ashamed. As if I'd just failed a test. He gave me breathing exercises. Visualization techniques. Reminded me to challenge the narrative. But the only narrative that was breaking was mine. A week later, I found Claire's old phone in the kitchen drawer. She'd upgraded a few months back. I wasn't looking for anything. Honestly. I was grabbing takeout menus. But it lit up when I touched the screen. No passcode. My heart thudded. I told myself not to open anything. Then I saw the email header. Subject, Wednesday 7 p.m. confirmed. Your place? From Lorne M. It took me a second. Lorne. As in Dr. Lorne. I stared at it. Every molecule in my body went still. I opened the email. There were more, dozens of them. Casual. Flirty. One said, Can't wait to see that dress again. Another ended with, You're my only patient worth undressing. I couldn't breathe. The blood in my ears drowned out everything else. My hands shook. My mouth went dry. The man I had been confessing to for nearly 3 years, the man who told me I was paranoid, delusional, controlling, had been sleeping with my wife the entire time. The therapy wasn't therapy. It was cover. It was conditioning. It was their insurance policy against me. And I bought it. I believed them. I defended them. Suddenly, every flash of doubt I'd buried came roaring back like wildfire. The late nights. The business trips. The moments when she turned her phone face down. The way he insisted my instincts were wrong. They weren't. They never were. I wasn't sick. I was betrayed. And now? Now it was my turn to stop talking and start planning. I told them nothing. I smiled, nodded, and started collecting ammo. When you realize the people closest to you have been playing you like a game, your first instinct is to blow everything up. I didn't. I did something worse. I waited. The day after I found the emails, I went to my therapy session like nothing had changed. I sat in that same leather chair, looked Dr. Lorne in the eye, and smiled. Actually, I said, I've been feeling more grounded lately. Less reactive. I think the exercises are working. He smiled back, smug. I'm glad to hear that, Nathan. That's the progress we've been working toward. Progress. That word rang in my head like a cruel joke. He talked to me for 45 minutes. Asked me the same routine questions. Took the same meaningless notes. He didn't know that I was recording every word on a mic hidden under my shirt collar. Later that night, I went home to Claire. She was on the couch, glass of wine in hand, watching some crime documentary. Hey babe, she said casually. Good session? Yeah, I replied. Lorne says I'm finally learning to trust again. She smiled, warm, affectionate, practiced. I'm proud of you. I looked at her like I believed it. Like I was grateful. Then I kissed her forehead. That kiss tasted like venom. Over the next 2 weeks, I built a case. I wasn't just gathering evidence, I was building narrative control. Something Claire and Lorne had been doing for years. They made me question my thoughts, my gut, my own reality. Now it was my turn. I pulled old emails from her laptop backups, ones she thought were deleted. I accessed bank statements. Saw that she'd been transferring small, regular payments to a Shell consulting account, registered under his name. They weren't even subtle. I hired a digital forensics expert. I told him everything. I'll never forget what he said. This isn't just cheating. This looks like long-term psychological manipulation. And if he bills you for sessions while involved with your wife, he's done. Like license revoked, lawsuit level done. Exactly. I also reached out to a lawyer. Not for divorce, not yet. For leverage. She asked me a simple question. Do you want to destroy them, or just make them regret underestimating you? I said, both. So I waited a little longer. And on a quiet Friday night, I told Claire I had a surprise. Dinner? She asked. Something better, I said. I pulled out a manila envelope. Thick. Heavy. What's this? Proof, I said calmly. Of who you really are. Of who he really is. She froze. Open it. She did. Inside? Printed emails. Transaction records. Session logs with false billing. And a typed statement from a second woman, another former client of Lorne's, who had been manipulated into silence years ago. Claire's face drained of color. You went through my stuff? No, I said. I went through our lies. She stood up. You can't do this. I cut her off. You don't get to tell me what I can or can't do anymore. Not after 3 years of playing me like a patient instead of a husband. She opened her mouth to speak again, but I raised my hand. I'm not here for an explanation. I'm here to let you know that your secret's not safe anymore. And I'm done being quiet. That was the moment she knew it was over. But what she didn't know was that the worst part hadn't even started. I didn't need revenge. I just needed the truth, in the right hands. 2 days after I confronted Claire, I filed the official complaint. It went straight to the state licensing board. The packet included everything: audio recordings, email transcripts, financial documents, and a sworn statement from the other woman Dr. Lorne had manipulated. She was hesitant at first, scared of the backlash. But when I showed her what I had, she cried. You're not crazy, she whispered. He did the same thing to me. That was all she needed to sign. I didn't stop there. I sent a redacted version of the file to every review site that listed Dr. Lorne's practice, with names and private details blacked out, but just enough to plant the seeds of truth. And then I waited. I didn't need to do anything dramatic. People like him always believe they're untouchable, until the walls start closing in. It started with the calls. Claire came home one night pale, shaking, her phone clutched in her hand like it might explode. They're investigating him, she said. I just blinked. Oh? They said someone filed a formal complaint. With documents. Proof. Who would do something like that? I shrugged. Probably someone who got tired of being lied to. She stared at me, but I didn't give her anything. That same week, his office shut down temporarily, due to unforeseen legal issues. By the end of the month, his license was under review, then suspended. Claire tried to stay composed, but the cracks were obvious. Her calm tone turned to snappiness. She started drinking more, getting sloppy with her stories. I knew what was coming, the spiral. She'd built her identity on the idea that she was smarter than everyone in the room, that she could control the narrative. Now, the narrative had escaped her grip, and it was telling the truth. But I wasn't done. I met with my lawyer again and asked a simple question. Can I sue? She smiled. Not only can you should. The civil suit wasn't just against Lorne for malpractice. It was also against Claire. Fraud. Emotional abuse. Financial manipulation. We didn't go public yet. That would come later. First, we served them. At the same time, Lorne got his papers at his townhouse, which, I should note, was leased in Claire's name. Claire got hers at work, in front of her team. I wasn't there to see it. But someone sent me a photo, her standing in the hallway, white as a ghost, holding a thick manila envelope with trembling hands. Poetic, really? She used therapy to cage me in shame. I used the truth to set myself free, and lock them in the same cell they built for me. That night, she came home and tried to talk. Nathan, I made mistakes. I know that. But do you really want to ruin both our lives? I looked her in the eye. You already did. Then I added, "This isn't revenge. This is rebalancing. You don't get to weaponize my trust and walk away clean." And then? I walked out. Not just from the room. Not just from the house. From the story she tried to trap me in. Because from now on, I was the one holding the pen. She used therapy to silence me. Now she had to sit in a courtroom and listen to every word she tried to bury. The hearing was set 6 months later. Civil court. Quiet. Clean. Brutal. I wasn't suing for money. I didn't want her house. Or her car. Or a cent of her inherited stock options. What I wanted was recognition. Legal, written recognition that I hadn't imagined this. That I was never crazy. That the years she spent gaslighting me through therapy, weaponizing my trust, and funneling me into the hands of a man who abused his professional license, were real. Tangible. Documented. And irreversible. Lauren's attorney tried to get the case dismissed. Cited patient-doctor confidentiality. Claimed consensual relationships between adults. The usual slimy legal maneuvering. But I had everything. Email timestamps. Office surveillance records. Testimonies. A signed copy of the practice's code of ethics, with his own name on the bottom, next to the words, "Zero tolerance for romantic involvement with active or former patients, or their family." Claire didn't testify at first. Her lawyer advised her to stay quiet. But during the second day, the judge brought up the financial transfers, those consistent monthly payments to the consulting account labeled LM Wellness. She broke. "I didn't know it was illegal," she said, voice shaking. The courtroom went still. She continued. "It started as an affair, yes, but it wasn't supposed to go this far. I thought I was helping Nathan. He was obsessed. He wouldn't stop asking questions. He was unraveling." The irony nearly made me laugh. I wasn't unraveling. I was waking up. My lawyer stood and calmly replied, "Your Honor, what we're hearing is a confession to coordinated gaslighting, emotional manipulation designed to make the plaintiff believe he was mentally unwell while the defendant maintained an illicit relationship with his so-called therapist." Claire didn't say another word that day. The judge ruled in my favor. Lorne lost his license. Permanently. Claire avoided criminal charges, but the civil court labeled her complicit in emotional misconduct and malpractice concealment. The transcript of the hearing? Public. I didn't share it. I didn't have to. Because stories like this don't need billboards, they whisper their way through circles. Social media. Mutual friends. Her perfect image? Shattered. And me? I moved into a small apartment across the city. Nothing fancy. Just quiet. Honest. For the first time in years, I didn't question what I saw in the mirror. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't broken. I was free. One evening, I got a letter in the mail. No return address. I opened it. I was wrong. I see that now. I never thought it would go this far. But you got out. I don't know how, but you did. I hope someday you'll forgive me. Claire. I folded it once. Slid it into the trash without a word. Forgiveness isn't given when someone says sorry. It's earned when they never do it again. I thought healing meant forgiving her. Turns out, it meant forgiving myself for ever trusting her. 3 months after the trial, I still hadn't told most people what happened. The details. The therapy. The affair. The lawsuit. It wasn't shame. It was protection. I was done letting people interpret my pain for entertainment. But one person found me anyway. Her name was Isabel. She worked as a part-time grief counselor at a local support group, not a therapist, not licensed to diagnose, just someone who'd been through hell and decided to stay behind to help others find the way out. We met at a bookstore, of all places. I was holding The Gift of Fear in one hand, attached in the other. She saw me in the aisle, smiled gently, and said, "Looking for answers, or closure?" I smiled back. "A little of both." We ended up talking for nearly an hour in the cafe attached to the store. She had warm eyes, but she didn't try to fix me. She didn't ask about my past. She didn't quote psychology jargon or recommend breathing exercises. She just listened. That night, she gave me her number. I didn't call for 2 weeks. Then, on a particularly quiet Sunday, I did. Our first real conversation lasted 3 hours. No pressure. No hidden motives. No games. She told me her story. She'd been cheated on too, by someone who claimed she was too intense for commitment, then married someone else 6 months later. She told me, "You can't heal where you were broken. Sometimes you have to start somewhere that never knew your pain." So I let myself start there. We took walks. Went to farmers' markets. Laughed at terrible old movies. Shared playlists and childhood regrets. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like I had to prove anything. I didn't have to apologize for being cautious. Or emotional. Or silent sometimes. She just let me be. One evening, I told her everything. Not because I had to, but because I wanted someone to finally know the whole truth. When I finished, she didn't blink. She just reached out, squeezed my hand, and said, "I'm proud of you. Not for surviving it, but for refusing to stay the version of yourself they wanted you to be." I didn't cry. Not then. But later that night, alone, I did. Not because I was hurt. But because I was finally safe. She came back one last time, not for love, but for shelter. And I let her feel the cold she once buried me in. It was a rainy Tuesday. I was leaving the grocery store, arms full, when I heard someone call my name. Soft. Hesitant. "Nathan?" I turned. Claire. Umbrella shaking in her hands. Hair damp. Face thinner than I remembered. She looked like someone who'd spent months trying to outrun something she never truly understood, herself. She walked toward me slowly, as if she wasn't sure I'd still be real. "Can we talk?" she asked. I didn't respond. Just stood there, letting the rain hit my shoulders. Letting her see that I was no longer someone she could shrink with words. She took that as permission. I don't know how it got this far. I've lost everything. My job, my reputation, She paused. "My compass." I said nothing. She tried again. "Do you ever miss it? Us?" And I swear, for a second, I felt something. Not nostalgia. Not warmth. Just the ghost of who I used to be, rising from under her voice, asking, what if she's really sorry this time? But ghosts aren't real. And neither was she. "You didn't lose everything," I said. "You gave it away." She blinked. I continued. "You used love like a leash. You used therapy like a cage. And when I stopped being your puppet, you didn't ask why, you just looked for a replacement." Claire's lips trembled. I was scared. So was I. But I didn't destroy anyone to feel safe. The silence between us was like glass, cold, delicate, dangerous if touched the wrong way. Then she said the line I always knew was coming. "Is there any chance you'd ever forgive me?" I looked her dead in the eyes and answered softly. "I already did." Her face shifted, hope rising like smoke. But I wasn't done. "I forgave you the moment I stopped needing closure from someone who never respected my truth. I forgave you the moment I stopped waking up hoping it was all a dream. But forgive doesn't mean return. It means release." She swallowed. Hard. "I hope you find peace," I said. "But you'll find it without me." And then I walked away. I didn't look back. Because you don't walk away from a burning house just to admire the ashes. I didn't just survive her betrayal. I turned it into something people now thank me for. A year after the trial, I gave my first public talk. It was for a private recovery group, not a big stage, no cameras, just chairs in a circle and people who'd been lied to the way I had. People still untangling the vines of manipulation wrapped around their minds. The topic? When therapy becomes a weapon. I didn't hold back. I told them how gaslighting isn't always yelling or violence. Sometimes it's a soft voice, telling you to doubt your gut until you forget you ever had one. When I finished, no one clapped. They just sat in silence, letting it sink in. Then one woman stood up and whispered, "You told my story before I knew how to." That's when I knew I had something bigger than closure. I launched a platform a month later. Clearline. A space dedicated to emotional recovery for survivors of psychological abuse, especially those manipulated through therapy and wellness masks. Articles. Forums. Anonymous story sharing. Even a legal help page, funded with my own money, connecting victims to lawyers who specialize in coercion, malpractice, and post-traumatic clarity. It didn't go viral. It didn't need to. It spread quietly. The way healing often does. People started writing in, saying, "I thought I was alone until I read this." And on the back end, I hired other survivors. Gave them jobs. Let them help others the way no one helped them. Lisa, one of my site editors, once told me, "You didn't just get out. You reached back in and started pulling people with you." That stuck. So did Isabel. She never asked for more than I could give. Never rushed my growth. She understood that healing isn't a race, it's a reclamation. We built something real. Not perfect. But honest. She doesn't flinch when I go quiet. I don't panic when she gets a text at midnight. We don't manage each other. We meet each other. One morning, while we were prepping a donation drop for Clearline, Isabel looked at me and said, "You ever wonder if she watches all this?" I knew who she meant. Claire. I thought about it for a moment. "Maybe," I said. "But she won't recognize it." "Why not?" "Because this version of me," I smiled, "is someone she never believed existed." I didn't need to ruin her reputation. She did that all by herself, and now she lives in the fallout. Claire tried to reinvent herself. New city. New job. New narrative. She moved 3 states away and launched a podcast. Unfiltered Grace. A weekly show about healing from toxic relationships and finding self-love after codependency. I wish I were making that up. She rebranded herself as the victim. Painted herself as the woman who loved too hard and got caught up in someone else's mental health spiral. I found out through an email from someone on Clearline's team. Subject line: "Guess who's giving advice now?" They sent a clip. Claire's voice. Polished. Practiced. False. If you've ever felt like someone blamed you for their pain, you're not alone. Sometimes people project their wounds onto us, and we get labeled the villain in their story. No names. No direct references. But I knew. She was trying to rewrite the story again. Only this time, the world didn't buy it. Her podcast had barely gained traction when commenters started posting links to the public court records. Screenshots. Articles. Even anonymized survivor statements from other people who'd been manipulated by Dr. Lorne, and protected by her silence. One comment hit different. "You can't build healing on someone else's shattered truth." We remember. She disabled the comments. Then took down the episode. Then disappeared. Again. Someone told me she was working retail now. Small boutique store. No more speaking gigs. No more public presence. Just quiet. And that's the thing. I didn't celebrate. I didn't gloat. Because that wasn't the point. The truth doesn't always explode. Sometimes it erodes the lie until there's nothing left but silence and consequence. Claire wasn't cancelled. She was revealed. And once the mask fell, no one cared what she had to say. I was never trying to destroy her. I was just trying to find myself again, and I did. It's been 2 years since the last time I heard her voice. And no, I don't miss it. Life now is honest. Not perfect. But real. And I'll take real over perfect any day. Isabel and I bought a place out near the woods. Nothing extravagant. 2 bedrooms, a garden, lots of windows. It's the kind of quiet that doesn't feel empty. I still run Clearline, though now there's a team. Writers. Moderators. Lawyers. Survivors turned advocates. People who turn their trauma into tools. Who know what it's like to rebuild trust brick by brick, starting with themselves. Sometimes I get letters. Not emails, letters. From men. Women. People who read my story, or heard whispers of it online, or just somehow felt it. One said, "I thought therapy was supposed to fix me. But now I know I was never broken. Just surrounded by people who wanted me to stay small." Another wrote, "Your story gave me the courage to leave. I packed my bags the same night." That's the impact no court ruling can measure. One day, Isabel found me sitting on the porch, staring into the trees, unread letter in hand. "Thinking about her?" she asked gently. I shook my head. "Not anymore." She sat beside me and handed me a cup of coffee. "No sugar, just how I take it now, different than before." She said, "Do you ever regret it?" I paused, thinking. About everything. The gaslighting. The sessions. The moment I realized my instincts were never the problem, my trust was. Then I looked at her. At the woman who never needed to be in control to feel safe. Who never used my vulnerability against me. "No," I said. "I don't regret any of it." "Why not?" "Because it didn't break me." I leaned back in the chair, exhaled slow, and let the weight of all those years drift into the breeze. And then I said it, not loud, but final. "They didn't cure my jealousy. They just proved it was never a symptom, it was a warning."